June 5, 2007, a cafe in a coastal suburb of Athens, Greece. A burly, middle-aged man tries to go unnoticed under a dark, badly fitting, and obvious wig. He is Antonio's Tony Mokbel, Australia's most wanted fugitive, with a $1 million bounty on his head. For over a year, he has been a ghost, a specter who vanished in the middle of a drug trafficking trial in Melbourne. But the international hunt is over. The image of his arrest, with that absurd wig, becomes an instant icon, a symbol of the end of an era. The wig is more than a failed disguise. It's a metaphor for the unraveling of a criminal mastermind, once known for his meticulous control. It is the reduction of a feared general of the underworld to an almost cartoonish figure. The visual stripping of a power once believed to be absolute. Almost 2 decades later, on April 4th, 2025, another Tony Mokbel emerges into the public light. He walks out of a Victorian court, not as a defiant kingpin, but as a 59-year-old man, frail and visibly diminished. An electronic monitor surrounds his ankle. He has spent almost 18 years behind bars, a time marked by violence. In 2019, a brutal stabbing in the maximum security Barwon prison fractured his skull and caused a traumatic brain injury, leaving him with permanent neurological damage. His release is not for good conduct. It is the direct consequence of one of the biggest scandals in Australian judicial history, the Lawyer X case. It was revealed that his own lawyer, Nicola Gabo, was acting as a police informant, a substantial miscarriage of justice that corrupted his convictions from the very root. Mokbel's physical transformation, from a powerful kingpin to an inmate with brain damage, mirrors the transformation of his own legal case. He is, simultaneously, a convicted drug trafficker, responsible for incalculable social harm, and the victim of a justice system that perverted its own rules to catch him. This duality presents an uncomfortable paradox. Can justice achieved through illegal means still be called justice? This is the story of how an immigrant from a working-class family who started with a pizzeria in the suburbs of Melbourne became the architect of an amphetamine empire. How he built a criminal organization known as the Company that operated with astonishing impunity during one of Australia's bloodiest conflicts, the Melbourne Gangland War. And crucially, how the very state apparatus that swore to bring him down, the Victoria Police, engaged in conduct so profoundly wrong that it would end up undermining its own greatest victory and potentially setting its most prized target free. This is not just the biography of a gangster, it is the autopsy of a system in crisis. Tony Mokbel's story begins far from Australia. He was born on August 11, 1965 in Kuwait, the son of Lebanese Christian parents who fled the sectarian conflict preceding the Lebanese Civil War. At age 8, the family emigrated to Melbourne, settling in the working-class suburb of Brunswick. His father worked at a Ford factory, his mother in a slaughterhouse. Speaking no English, young Antonio struggled to adapt in school, an outsider in a new land, finding respite only in Australian rules football. On August 11, 1981, his 16th birthday, his world fractured. His father drowned at Bondi Beach in Sydney. Mokbel would later reflect that this event left him resentful of the world. He dropped out of school. A psychological profile conducted years later in prison would identify this moment not just as trauma, but as the decisive moment of his life. Before his father's death, he had no criminal record. The tragedy was not just a personal loss. It was the foundational wound of his worldview, a betrayal by fate that bred a deep resentment and a rejection of the rules of a society he perceived as arbitrary and unfair. His criminal career can be understood as an attempt to impose his own order and control on a world that had dealt him a chaotic blow. At 18, his first arrest came for a street fight, the start of a long list of convictions for assault, death threats, and resisting authority during the 1980s. To understand Mokbel's rise, one must understand the criminal ecosystem in which he germinated. The Melbourne underworld of the 1990s was a melting pot of factions. On one side was the Italian-based Carlton crew, led by figures like Alphonse Gangatano and Mick Gatto. Focused on extortion and drug trafficking, they operated from their stronghold on Lygon Street, the city's Little Italy, and were allies of the powerful Moran family. The Morans, with Lewis, Mark, and Jason at the helm, owned syndicate. Known as the Babyface Killer, Williams specialized in amphetamine production and distribution, waging a war of extermination against the Morans and the Carlton crew. In this volatile landscape, Tony Mokbel emerges. His organization, the company, operated like a corporation, focusing on the large-scale import and manufacture of synthetic drugs and extensive money laundering. Strategically, Mokbel allied with Carl Williams, combining his business brain with Williams's brutality to dominate the Melbourne underworld. After leaving school, Mokbel worked menial jobs: dishwasher, shop clerk. At 19, he bought a small milk bar. At 22, a pizzeria with his brother. These legitimate businesses provided him with a facade and his first lessons in commerce. But his true ambition lay elsewhere. The decisive moment came in 1992. He was sentenced to 12 months in jail for attempting to bribe a county court judge. This first significant prison experience did not rehabilitate him, it radicalized him. The experience of being punished for trying to corrupt the system seemed to teach him a perverse lesson. To beat the system, he needed to operate on a scale that made him immune to it. Upon his release, he dived headfirst into large-scale drug trafficking, initially to finance a growing gambling habit, but soon, with a much larger goal in mind, to build an empire. Tony Mokbel was not a street thug. He was a businessman. His genius lay not in violence, but in organization. He founded a drug syndicate he called The Company, a sophisticated operation structured like a corporation, with himself as the CEO, the general. He left cannabis behind to focus on higher-margin products, amphetamines and ecstasy. The scale of his ambition was industrial. In 1997, a drug lab he was operating, valued at $78 million, exploded with him inside. He walked away unharmed and without charges, a sign of the luck and audacity that would define his career. By late 2000, his logistical capability was such that he organized the import of an ephedrine shipment sufficient to produce drugs with a street value of $2 billion. Police reports described him as a criminal cartel, highly conscious of surveillance, using multiple phones, and possessing a sophisticated knowledge of legend. But every empire needs an army. In 2002, Mokbel found his enforcer. Carl Williams, a low-level amphetamine dealer with a deceptively affable appearance, was in a personal war of extermination against the Moran family. After Jason Moran shot him in the stomach in 1999 over a drug debt, Mokbel and Williams, introduced by a mutual friend, formed an alliance of convenience, a perfect and terrifying symbiosis. Mokbel, who considered murders bad for business, had the capital and strategic vision. Williams, the babyface killer, Williams, the executor. Together, they formed a complete criminal entity that the old guard factions, fractured and anchored in old grudges, could not resist. Their partnership was the engine that drove the most violent phase of the Gangland War. The definitive proof of their collaboration was the murder of Louis Moran, the clan's patriarch, in March 2004. Authorities allege that Mokbel and Williams jointly financed the hit, offering $150,000 to the gunman. With millions of dollars flowing from his drug empire, Mokbel faced a classic problem: how to clean the dirty money. His strategy was not just to hide his wealth, but to embed it into the fabric of Melbourne society. He laundered over $2 million through a well-known brothel in the city center at the top of the town. But his true passion and his main laundering channel was the horse racing industry, the sport of kings. For nearly a decade, he used betting agents to place enormous wagers on his behalf, washing millions. His influence extended to owning racehorses, which he named with macabre humor. One was called Frosty the Snowman, a slang term for drugs. Another of his businesses, a fashion boutique, was named Love of Style and Design, whose initials spelled LSD. By becoming a prominent figure at the racetracks and in fashionable social circles, he wasn't just cleaning his money, he was cleaning his image, building social capital that made him seem untouchable. Mokbel's infiltration of legitimate sectors demonstrated the corrosive power of narco money, blurring the lines between the underworld and high society, and showing how his influence filtered far beyond the world of crime. By 2003, the streets of Melbourne had become a battlefield. Murders in broad daylight were commonplace, and public trust in the police was eroding with each new headline. In response, Victoria Police created the Piranha Task Force, an elite unit with unprecedented resources. Its initial goal was to solve the 29 unsolved murders and stop the bloodshed. Piranha represented the state's counterattack, a declaration of all-out war on the underworld. They employed counterinsurgency tactics, mass surveillance, with thousands of hours of wiretaps and physical tracking, the cultivation of high-level informants, and an innovative financial warfare strategy in collaboration with the Australian Taxation Office, ATO, to attack the gangsters' unexplained wealth. After successfully dismantling Carl Williams' syndicate, Piranha's sights turned to the grand prize, the man they considered the mastermind of the entire amphetamine trade, Tony Mokbel. In March 2006, the net was closing. Mokbel was in the middle of a trial for importing 2 kilograms of cocaine, a case known as Operation Plutonium. While on bail, he received a tip. The Piranha Task Force was about to formally charge him with the murders of Louis Moran and another trafficker, Michael Marshall. The source of this critical information would years later become the epicenter of the scandal that would shake the justice system. However, the escape was a masterpiece of criminal logistics. First, he hid in a country house in Bonnie Doon, Victoria. Meanwhile, his associates purchased a 17-meter yacht, the Edwina, for $350,000. The yacht was transported by truck across the entire continent, from the east coast to Fremantle, Western Australia. Mokbel was secretly driven across the country to meet it, The vessel was modified with a hiding spot and larger fuel tanks. With a crew of Greek sailors, he set sail on November 11, 2006. On December 24th, Christmas Eve, Tony Mokbel arrived in Greece, living in a seaside apartment in Athens under the alias Stephen Pappas. And with a new look thanks to his now infamous wig, Mokbel continued to run the company by phone. But the police were listening. Thanks to wiretaps and informants, they knew he had a meeting at the Delphinia Cafe. On June 5, 2007, Greek police, in collaboration with the Australians, staged a fake immigration raid on the premises. They arrested him without incident. What followed was a lengthy extradition battle. Mokbel fought in the Greek courts, the Australian federal courts, and even took his case to the European Court of Human Rights. In a bizarre twist, Lebanon, a country of which Mokbel is also a citizen, simultaneously requested his extradition, a move experts described as strange, and which fueled speculation that Mokbel had bribed Lebanese officials to create a safe haven, as Lebanon would not extradite him to Australia. Finally, all his legal avenues were exhausted. On May 17, 2008, he was put on a private Gulfstream jet at a cost to taxpayers of $450,000 and sent back to Melbourne to face justice. His ability to flee to the other side of the world, continue to operate his business, and wage a legal battle in multiple international jurisdictions proved he was not a simple local crime boss. He was an actor on the stage of transnational organized crime. Upon his return, Tony Mokbel went directly to prison to begin serving a 12-year sentence for the plutonium case, for which he had been convicted in absentia. In July 2012, he received his final sentence. After pleading guilty to 3 massive drug trafficking charges related to the company, operations known as Quills, Orbital, and Magnum, he was sentenced to 30 years in prison with a non-parole period of 22 years. The judge described his arrogant disregard for the law and his business-like approach to drug trafficking. The king was chained. His life in Barwon prison was brutal. In February 2019, 2 inmates attacked him with improvised knives, shanks, stabbing him up to 7 times and repeatedly kicking him in the head. The attack allegedly in retaliation for a newspaper article describing him as a standover man who had disrupted a prison extortion racket almost cost him his life. He suffered a traumatic brain injury that required emergency surgery and left him with permanent cognitive impairment. As Mokbel fought for his life and then adapted to a prison existence with brain damage, the foundations of the state's case against him began to crumble. The worst-kept secret in Victoria's justice system, finally who had helped police win the gangland war, was unmasked as Mokbel's own lawyer, Nicola Gabo. It was revealed she had been a registered police informant from 2005 to 2009, precisely the period she was representing him. She fed her handlers thousands of reports detailing her clients' legal strategies and criminal activities. The High Court of Australia called her actions a fundamental and appalling breach of her duties, and the Victoria Police's conduct reprehensible. The police, in their desperation to win, had adopted the enemy's tactics. Deceit, betrayal was systematic. First, his conviction for cocaine importation in the plutonium case, for which he received 12 years in absentia, was quashed in December 2020. Then in October 2025, he was acquitted of trafficking MDMA in the Quills case. For the Orbital case involving incitement to import, his conviction was quashed and a retrial was ordered. The only conviction that stood was from the Magnum case for trafficking methamphetamine while a fugitive, as the court determined Gabo's role had not contaminated that specific case. These legal victories, combined with his fragile health and the 18 years already served in prison, constituted the exceptional circumstances that led a court to grant him bail in April 2025. Today, Tony Mokbel is a free man, albeit with strict conditions. His guilt as a drug trafficker is a historical fact, but his story has become inseparable from that of a justice system that, in its zeal to defeat him, betrayed its most sacred principles. Tony Mokbel's legacy is, therefore, a profound paradox. He is the architect of one of the largest drug empires in Australian history, a man responsible for flooding the streets with narcotics. Yet he is also the unwitting catalyst who exposed one of the biggest scandals in the country's legal history. His case forced a painful self-examination of police conduct and has permanently altered the landscape of criminal justice in Victoria. The final unsettling question is this: does the conviction of a man like Tony Mokbel justify the corruption of the entire system? And if the system corrupts itself to catch a monster, has it not, in a way, created another?